think I'm going to lose another game. They are perfection. 4-0. Seminoles rolling. Ranked for the first time in forever. That's what I hear. I don't check out those fake rankings, but the top 25, that actually makes sense. Firmly entrenched in the top 10 in the nation. This is our Florida State show that we deliver each and every Wednesday at 6 o'clock Eastern time, and we just hope everybody's safe down there in South and Central Florida, and we will talk a little bit about the weather, most importantly, as it relates to all of you, and also as it relates to the game. Next to me, of course, Jason Parker, NBC6. Logan Robinson, of course, showing up from Knoll Game Day. Guys, how we doing?
I'm doing fine. I actually took a nap after working a 12-hour day today with our storm coverage. Logan, I hope you've supplied. Did you take all the beer and water from Publix when the storm was initially coming your way before it decided to screw over Fort Myers in Southwest Florida?
Yeah, we're fully stocked. I'll go ahead and tell you that. We fully stocked a couple of days ago. We're ready for whatever amount of wind that hits this area. So we'll be just fine. We had a flicker of power just about an hour ago. But I think Tallahassee is just going to be beautifully fine for what should be a gorgeous Saturday kickoff, which we'll talk about here in a couple of days.
Logan, I just want to give you 1 minute to just recap. Let's say before we obviously talk about the seriousness, I just want to recap for one moment how great of a sports weekend I had this past weekend. I just want to go through it with you real quick. And if you want to mute it off the top. Thursday, Thursday, the Steelers got owned by the Browns. Just looked like
owned. I
Owned.
don't know about owned, but
looked like
two awful teams going at it.
Looked like Dookie against the Browns. I mean, that was number one.
Friday, you're in the Dookie town.
Absolutely. Friday, the Yankees clinch a playoff berth, which they later on Tuesday clinched the American League East. Shout out to the Yankees on that one. Saturday, you had the trifecta of the Gators losing to Tennessee, which anytime the Gators lose, an angel gets its wings. The Canes looking like absolute you-know-what against – wait, hold on. Let me look up that team real quick. Hold on. Because it wasn't Tennessee. Oh, it was Middle Tennessee State. Middle Tennessee State. Miami gave up the most points to a non-Power 5 team since 1944. Middle Tennessee State's first ever win over a ranked team. Ooh, I don't think the U is back, guys. They're not. And then
I don't think so.
We made Boston College look silly in Tallahassee. Then on Sunday, the Ravens beat the Patriots on the road. The Dolphins beat the Bills, and anytime the Bills lose, I'm still mad at Jim Kelly and Thurman Thomas and Bruce Smith for ruining my childhood when I was a Dolphins fan as a child down here. So anytime the Dolphins beat the Bills, it's a good day. So it was arguably the greatest sports weekend for me, which can only mean one thing. This sports weekend coming up is going to suck.
I hope not.
I hope not either, but it could happen. This is what concerns me.
Well, Florida State fans, you're going to want to join the next hour over on the Miami channel as well, because I need some kind of explanation on that one, because, that was Middle Tennessee State beating a ranked team for the first time ever. My first response to that was, why is Miami ranked? Mm-hmm. They're really not a ranked team. They shouldn't be ranked. They're ranked. They're not that good. They got their butts kicked. This was no last-second field goal.
A few laughs may have come out of my mouth in the press box at that game, 24-10 at halftime, when they scored a 98-yard touchdown. A few has may have happened to me. So let's just say that it was easy to make it out of that game in the third quarter because fans were leaving in droves at halftime. But I'm sorry, Mark, if we could not talk about the Canes, because we only talk about teams who are ranked here on Florida State Live with MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Sorry, we don't talk about those other teams. Sorry, we don't. We don't deal with those inferior teams from Coral Gables.
Well, we don't have to spend a whole lot of time on the Boston College game. I started to watch the replay. I didn't watch it live, but I started to watch the replay. And again, we don't need to spend a whole lot of time because that had a lot to do with BC being horrible. But this is Florida State now doing to bad teams what they should do to bad teams. They haven't been doing this for the last 5 years against a team like that, where they just say, we dominate from the first snap and we just blast away and we dominate in every possible phase of the game.
There has to be a level of concern when you look at the way that day went. There were a lot of close games, a lot of interesting results. And you think, Florida loses, Miami loses. A lot of teams were in close games, and you seem to think,
Oklahoma
okay,
loses.
Oklahoma loses to Kansas State. You seem to think, oh, is this going to be the game where Florida State trips up? Florida State had a close win over LSU, close win over against Louisville. And then Trey Benson scores a touchdown on the opening kickoff, and you think, okay, we're fine. And Florida State just looks dominating. And Logan, I think you're with me on this one. It's good to see Florida State dominate the teams they should dominate. It's good to see Florida State come out and get a convincing win. I will say the one, and I texted you during the game, take Jordan Travis out of the game. I think we played Jordan too long, but you know what? He was obviously healthier than we thought. I hope he was healthier than we thought. But yeah, I mean, I know we're not going to talk a lot about it, but I'm very happy that Florida State is beating teams they should beat. Yeah,
beating them with a lot of not so great things affecting them coming from that Louisville game with guys going down and having to deal with that. And you're hoping that Jordan Travis is fully healthy, and I still don't think he's fully healthy yet. Kind of saw signs of his old ways a little bit during that BC game, scrambling out of the pocket there in the end zone and getting over there, which was phenomenal, and finding Hakeem Williams. And so then they wouldn't have been a safety. But these guys were dealing with a lot of injuries going into this game, a really physically fought game up there at Louisville. And so you have to throw in some guys that haven't played a whole ton at that starting position. And you allow Patrick Payton to get in there, who I thought had some really nice plays during the game and just looks like a potential starting defensive end for Florida State in his career. We've been really high on him since the spring. You had Derek McGlennon. Then, the interior defensive line, not like Boston College is superior there in their offensive line this year. They're dealing with a lot of injuries. But that interior defensive line woke up, and that's something that wasn't the case at Louisville. And, you got to hope now that that interior defensive line continues to build and get better, because, you're still out without Fabian Lovett. We'll see if he'll be available this upcoming weekend, but I'm not expecting to see Lovett. So Florida State's going to rely heavily again on Jared Jackson, Joshua Farmer along the side of Robert Cooper, also Malcolm Ray, who we got to see fully participate today, which is a good sign there. So they're going to rely more on those three guys. And we saw Daniel Lyons in there too as a true freshman getting some reps. Azrae Thomas too on the defensive side, and that defensive back room coming away with a beautiful, all the way from the other side of the field, coming away and tackling the running play there. It just, there's signs of guys that are second stringers that are like, hey, if they need to come in now, they've had enough experience in games, which has been nice, to be able to shuffle them in. And Greedy Vance gets an interception. Marion Cooper just practically ended the game there in the first quarter with that interception on Boston College's one of their first drives. So it was just overall domination and Doak. And like Jason said, these games back in the day, Florida State was supposed to always win these against these bad teams. And so you start seeing signs. We were talking about it in the press box. You see signs of what it used to be. Boston College is not a good team.
No.
But for Florida State to go in with not a fully 100% Jordan Travis, guys that are down, you're without Jared Verse, you're without Fabian Lovett, and guys still dinged up. It was an impressive win, and it allows some of these guys to get healthier going into this game on Saturday.
And not so much talking about the Boston College game, but my question for you. Look, I'll admit, I'm the diehard Florida State fan, proud Florida State alum. I talked smack when we were 0-4 last season. I still was the biggest FSU smack talker. I did not think we'd be 4-0 to start the season. I know you didn't think we'd be 4-0 to start the season. I think there are a lot of Florida State homers who did not think we'd be 4-0 to start the season. How, I guess it's a rhetorical question, but how important was it for Florida State to start off that season 4-0, knowing the next three games we've got coming up?
0-4 to 4-0, a lot of momentum. Just a lot of, I think these practices are getting harder, and for a better reason, because the coaching has gotten a lot tougher just going through them. I mean, there's no relaxation. It doesn't matter. It's almost like they're back in fall camp almost. I mean, it is really, these are not easy practices. And I think that's just the best thing about this staff. This staff is going to bring energy 24/7. Mike Norvell sets that standard no matter what. There's a reason why I don't think Odell Higgins is retiring anytime soon. He loves this. I mean, these are hard pushed 2.5 hour practices, and they suck really badly. And then when you get to Saturdays, these should be easier. You should be able to go over there and cover your assignments because these coaches are really hands-on in your ear. But if you make a good play, you will get rewarded with that, but you're on to the next play. You get a little clap here and there and tap on the helmet, but then you got to get back and get ready for the next play. There's a lot of tempo in these practices. It's just created a lot better energy. There's a lot more motivation going into this. And when you're undefeated, that's how it goes for any team. When you're undefeated, you don't want to lose. When you've won 4 games, you don't want to go into a game and end that streak right there. And so it's just created a lot of momentum. It's created a lot of recruiting momentum, which we'll talk about. It's just good energy around right now. Tallahassee, the community. I mean, we see it. FSU versus UF already sold out 2 months in advance. We have not been able to say that in a decade. I mean, it's been long since Florida State has been able to say 2 months in advance a game has been sold out. Like, what are we talking about here? This whole entire country is excited. Florida State fans around the country, along with definitely here in Tallahassee, they're stoked. And I know definitely this team wants to perform well because they're getting a lot of love right now.
A quick question for you. Did you get tackled by any players at practice this week?
Got close today. But this time my phone was dead, so I couldn't look down at my phone. If I didn't have my if I was looking down at my phone, I would have gotten ran over by Malik McLean.
Okay,
so a little bit better than DJ Lundy, but still Malik McLean is no.
And I'd like to point out real quick that the big win over Boston College overshadowed Florida State getting a 5-star recruit. Hakeem Williams, 5-star wide receiver, number 2 player in South Florida, number 5 player in the state of Florida, recruited by 24/7 out of Fort Lauderdale Stranahan. I mean, let's be honest. I'm going to say we were there, only NBC6, only live local station down there for the event. When you've got a signing day ceremony where you bring out Peter Warwick and Snoop Minnis, that was a big event. That literally, I think the exact words I said are, "What the hell is Peter Warwick doing here?" But you bring out Peter Warwick and Snoop Minnis for your signing day. That was a huge moment, and I think, Logan, along those lines, this is a guy who you look at the other. Everyone say he was going to go to Texas A&M. Miami was the first school to offer him. He's a South Florida guy. And I talked to him afterwards. I said, "Why Florida State?" He said he made this decision 2 months ago to go to Florida State. That he loved Florida State. He loved the coaching staff. He loved Coach Norvell. He loved Ron Dugans. I mean, what does this mean? I don't want to say this because, once again, let's just be honest. We could be talking in 3 weeks, and Florida State could be 4-3. I don't think we will be, but it could. What does this mean right now? Are we almost back?
I don't know. I don't know about back yet, but Hakeem Williams can help you get to back. And I love that. I'm finding some good lingo here after a good little 10-minute power nap. Hakeem Williams adds on more than a lot of things, but just going to the recruitment and everything. Shout out to the Donk. I want to give some respect on his name.
Put some respect.
On Ron Dugan's name. Put some respect on Ron Dugan's name right now. Quote it. Mark, clip it for Twitter right now. Put some respect on Ron Dugan's name. Both on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube it, because both on the field, as the wide receiver room has hit a entire 180 with a wide range of players making touchdown grabs, along with now leading stats already 4 games into the season, beating last year. So that's a wrap. And then you go over here and you land 5-star Hakeem Williams, which, like he told you, Jason, seemed like Florida State had put themselves in a spot to kind of wrap that up. I think during his last visit, which we saw him coming to visit, he was doing the war chant, he was doing the chop, coming into practice. He looks like a natural being around the coaching staff and talking with the players. He just feels comfortable, and I think the relationships there was number one. And number two, you look at Mike Norvell and what he's been able to do, and he's been preaching a lot of things to these families, to these players, these top tier talent guys. Jason, they've gotten there with those they've been there number 2. They came in second place, third place, usually with these top talented guys. And now you finally go out here, you get 4 wins in a row. You go over there, beat LSU right in front of him in New Orleans. You go on the road, you beat Louisville, which in that game almost you shouldn't have won, because you're throwing in Tate Rodemaker. You didn't know where that went. Tate Rodemaker makes strides there. So Then you take care of business against Boston College, too. That was just after he committed, but still you do what you need to do. Hakeem Williams is special. He's a big guy. That's a big wide receiver, too. Got to see him in person. You saw him in person, too.
Mhm.
That doesn't look like a 17-year-old to me. That doesn't look like a 17-year-old.
He is he's 6'3". He's a grown man. I mean, you're talking about a guy, 35 catches, 11 touchdowns. And one of the people who was there covering the event, a writer, I'm going to call him a hater, a Miami fan who, didn't go to the University of Miami. But he was saying that his 5-star was inflated because it was camp numbers. Well, I'm sorry. 35 receptions, 700 yards, and 11 touchdowns. That's 1 touchdown for nearly every 3 receptions. I'm going to take those numbers as being pretty damn good in a game and not just camp numbers. So, and don't get me wrong, A&M's still going to make a push for him. I think Pitt is going to still make a big push for him. The recruiting coordinator for Pitt is obviously a South Florida guy from Broward County. But, I mean, this is a guy who, for the last 5 years, Florida State swings and misses on, for the most part. And for him to decide, I'm gonna hit up the turnpike, leave the 954, head to the 850. The momentum is strong. The momentum is strong for the Garnet and Gold. And then, it could all fall apart, but I think right now I like where it's going. I like where we're going. I'm going to give here. You can clip this one, Logan, Mark. You can clip this one. Get ready to hit record. I'm happy with Mike Norvell getting a top recruit in Hakeem Williams. Mike Norvell did something right.
He did something right. He's 4-0.
Hit the output. I know.
Thank you, Jason, for your stamp there for Mike.
He did something right.
He's going to keep on doing things right if they keep on winning, obviously. But I'm not even done with Hakeem Williams. There's another name out there that we need to start keeping a close eye on, because I said this from the very beginning. This recruitment's not going to be over. Both for Hakeem, another 5-star, Jalen Brown, who got to see Florida State defeat LSU in New Orleans. Also there, Hakeem, Jalen Brown were tossing the ball with one another at one of the camps over the summer with FSU. They have a good relationship there. We're going to have Hakeem Williams on in an hour and a half on our show at 8 o'clock tonight. I have a certain question for him. He hasn't done any podcast interviews after his commitment. There's a lot of things to go into this, but I do want to ask him who he's recruiting, who he's after. What kind of recruit is he? Is he a guy that's going to be social, or is he going to be behind the scenes doing things, or is he just going to let it play out kind of like Lamont Green Jr., where he ain't doing much of anything? He's just ready to get here and absolutely annihilate whoever's in front of him. But there's chitter chatter. And whenever there's chitter chatter, it's usually 2 months, 3 months in advance. So something maybe after this football season or something, if things go in the right way for Florida State. But when you hear chitter chatter, it's almost, well, we have a hurricane coming, so it's not something to really metaphorically talk about. But usually in a little while, we'll get an answer, and I don't know, just something to keep an eye on.
Make sure you ask him which station was the only one there. Just make sure you ask him who cared about covering him. But I will say about Jalen Brown, we did interview him before the start of the season. We went down to practice at Gulliver Prep down in Miami. Other than being amazed at how much people are paying for a high school education, we won't get into that one for one moment. Jalen Brown wants to leave South Florida. He's committed to LSU. There were a lot of people who thought he was going to commit to Miami, but he wants out of South Florida. So I think LSU is still the leader, but I do agree with Logan. I would not be surprised if Florida State makes a big run for him. And I think getting Hakeem is a number one. Keeping Hakeem is number one. But if you can get Jalen Brown to flip from LSU to Florida State, that would be huge.
Florida State Seminoles live here every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern time. So we do this every so often, especially it being a big game against Wake Forest, where we simulcast on the main network to let people know, hey, on the main channel, hey, we've got a Florida State show. It's on the Florida State channel every Wednesday at 6 o'clock Eastern time. So join us over there. Don't forget us about us on the Florida State channel. So that's every Wednesday at 6. It's not going to be here on the main channel, over on the Florida State channel each and every week. Also, Jason, keep in mind.
I was going to say, I'm sorry, the main channel wants to see the deliciousness that is me and Logan. They need to see this tag team duo. We're like back the New Age Outlaws from the WWF days back in the day. I think
not too much of a good thing, though. We
do
it in small doses just to remind people that we've got these other team channels. And Jason will remind you that Florida State is not only 4-0, but they might be the only team in the country with 3 wins against Power 5 teams. The biggest game of the year, I would say, to date, is coming up this Saturday, hopefully kicking off at 3:30 Eastern Time in Tallahassee on ABC. Wake Forest coming to town, coming off a disappointing, discouraging from a standpoint of final score against Clemson in overtime. We got Tony Syracuse on the line from Last Word on College Football to tell us about Wake. Tony.
Guys, how you doing tonight?
Man, I apologize for that lead-in Mark gave you. I mean, let's welcome Tony. Tony, we had him in the offseason. He's a great guy, great commentator, Braves guy, and Mark just shot you down like the first day of duck hunting season.
Shot him down.
No, Mark did all right.
Good God. Tony, thank you for joining us, man. We appreciate it. First of all, I guess our first question from our side is, what is Wake's mindset right now at this point? Obviously, Wake came in, started the season 4-0 or 3-0, disappointing game last week against Clemson, but they were still in it. Let's give Wake Forest credit. They were in it with Clemson for the most part.
They were in it. They went to overtime.
I was about to say, they were in it. They were in it, dog. They were rolling
the game.
We were pulling for them.
They weren't staying within 20 points.
Mark,
we were pulling for them.
Mark, hear me out. They still lost. There's only winners and losers. There's not close.
Well, there's difference between in it and not in it.
They were in
it to win it.
Wow, you really need to take more power naps with your cliches over there. That's a solid. Logan brought his cliche.
I've been rolling today.
And you're good tonight here. But on a serious note, Tony, what is Wake's mindset after a disappointing loss? The way they lost against Clemson.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be seen, quite frankly, because the emotion after the game was very stark. You saw guys like Michael Juergens take the podium, the starting center take the podium in the post-game press conference, fighting back tears because of the loss in double overtime. You saw Sam Hartman take the podium. He was the one player who hadn't even changed out of his uniform yet. He was, still had that on. And I think it's fair to say he was pissed. He wasn't sad. He was pissed. He answered maybe 3, maybe 4 questions, and we weren't done. And he said, you know what? I don't want to do this anymore, and walked off. I wouldn't call it a temper tantrum like some have. He was just pissed, and he didn't want to do it. Look, the week before, they had a very close game against Liberty where they had to, get a stop on a 2-point conversion in the closing minutes of the game. And Hartman wasn't exactly having fun after that one either. Gave himself a D grade. On this one, he said, I failed. We lost, so I failed. It's hard to say when you had the kind of game he did. He threw 6 touchdown passes, which broke his own school record for touchdowns in a game. But you like the quarterback having that kind of mentality, putting the team on his shoulder, especially a guy who's been around as long as Hartman has. That having been said, look, Dave Clawson has a policy 24 hours. Deal with the game however you're going to deal with it. We're going to regroup on Sunday. We're going to watch some game film. We're going to start the prep for the next week, and we got to rally together. Now, when I say there's a lot to be determined, it's because, as simple as that sounds, it didn't quite work that way after the Liberty game. He admitted that he had to pull the team together and remind them that they won. Because even on Sunday, there were a lot of heads hanging in the film room. And he told them, you guys won, and we're not going to do this. Was it clean? No. Was it pretty? No. Did you win? Yes. We'll fix what needs to be fixed and move on. But we're not going to be that team that hangs our heads after a win. Because you start doing that too much, and the game's no longer fun. So, is he able to? Now he's got to kind of rally them from the hurt and the pain, because this was a team that going into the Clemson game for the first time in several years truly believed to a man they could beat Clemson. They had the personnel to compete with Clemson. Clemson was shorthanded in the defensive secondary with some injuries. Of course, they were still missing Xavier Thomas. That makes a big difference. And to a man, Wake Forest believed they could do it. They got off to a slow start, like they are getting in a bad habit of doing. But they played well throughout the second half and into the 2 overtimes, throughout the 2 overtimes. So when that last pass got knocked down in the end zone, it was really deflating for them. So Clawson's job is not just to get them ready for an extremely difficult ACC opponent, but make sure their heads are in the right places. Make sure they're in the right headspace to move forward. And look, we talked with him yesterday, Tuesday, and he said they had a great practice on Tuesday. Everyone's really in it. They're really motivated. You expect the coach to say that, but you need to physically see it. You need to see it come Saturday that this team has turned the page and wiped the Clemson game off their brains.
That was
Go ahead. Quick question for you. I apologize. I guess my question would be about Sam Hartman.
Mm-hmm.
Sam Hartman, when he started the season, he did not start the season because there was the medical issue. We talked about that. There were some people who wondered if it was something to do with mental health. Turns out it was a blood clot issue.
Correct.
But he is back now, and I think that puts Wake Forest in serious competition. I think they can come in and beat Florida State. How important is it right now for Wake to have Sam Hartman back for the stretch of Clemson, for the stretch of playing Florida State, NC State they've got later on? How important is it to have Sam Hartman back?
It's everything. I don't think that's an overstatement. Look, Mitch Griffiths, who is the future for Wake Forest at quarterback, is a good quarterback, very physically gifted, knows the offense, but there's something that you can't teach a Mitch Griffiths, and that is how to have the it factor, which, I repeatedly say, which is what Hartman has. He walks into the huddle. It's his huddle. Everybody knows it. You don't need to say, you don't need to stake your claim. You're chewing out an offensive lineman. It's not a problem. It's not, some guy saying, who the heck are you to chew me out? It's Sam Hartman chewing me out. And Hartman has this ability, if you will, to treat everybody the same, good or bad. And I say that half jokingly, in that you could be Sam Hartman's roommate, you could be his best friend, or you could be, a first-year freshman. And if you make a mistake during a game on the field, you miss an assignment, you don't run a route clean, you miss a block, he's going to chew you out the same regardless of who you are, because it's his huddle. He knows it's his offense to carry right now. They've got a lot of talent at the skill positions, but he knows it's not going to go anywhere without him. Like I said, Mitch Griffiths, a lot of talent, great to look at in the future, but right now you're not going to get anywhere this season without Sam Hartman taking the snaps.
Nope. Yeah, that was a long game, very physical game too. Anytime that you're playing Clemson, that's how it's going to be. You got to be to that level, and that's something we've always known from being down here in Tallahassee. What is the team feeling like? I mean, health-wise, any injuries to keep an eye on? Any guys that we've heard that have been limited, or guys that went down against Clemson that we're still going to have to wait till Saturday for availability? Because I know at least here in Tallahassee, you'll never get any word about who's going to be out there on Saturday per Mike Norvell. You will not know that. You just kind of got to – we'll know it and see it at practice, but can't say anything about it. What is the outlook on, at least health-wise, for Wake Forest coming into this game after a really long, extensive overtime game?
It's funny you say that, because Mark and I have joked about this. And, in my professional years at last word on college football, I've covered SMU under Sonny Dykes. I've covered UCLA under Jim Mora and Chip Kelly. They all have, and now I've got Wake Forest. Every school has different policies, right, on what you can and can't do. When we were at UCLA, you could be there at practice and go on your Twitter feed and say, hey, running back Joe Smith has a boot on his right foot and is working out with the trainers. Chip Kelly, now when you would ask Chip Kelly, what's his status or what's his injury, he would just say he's unavailable. That was his 2 words for, because, including the contraction in there, he's unavailable for everything, everybody, ever. Go on to Wake Forest, and we could see guys working out with the trainers and not practicing. We're not allowed to mention them. They may as well be in the witness protection program. When Sam Hartman, after he had his vascular surgery, and we all pretty much knew what it was and what was going on because we could physically see the remnants of the surgery. We weren't even allowed to discuss whether he was even showing up at practice to help the team and talk with the team. It was, so it really is that. I'll say this, based on the last game, you're going to want to keep an eye on Kalen Carson. We don't know his status, but he got banged up in the last game. So you're going to want to keep an eye on his availability. But I think everybody else came out of it in pretty good health.
before we continue on talking about this week with Wake Forest, obviously, Logan, we have to do something real quick. We haven't done this before. Can you give me a 4-0 quality reason why we should hit the like button?
Hit the like button, and then Tony, this is how it goes. But if you hit the like button, then Florida State will win on Saturday. It's been working since the very beginning of the season. It's been working. So I don't know. We don't have as much people on tonight, but hopefully we get the 100 likes. It might help. But yeah, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. So then you'll be with us every Wednesday evening like this.
I don't think we have as many people on because I don't know, Tony. I don't know if you saw this, but Miami got spanked by Middle Tennessee State. So
I saw it.
We have a lot of Miami haters who like to come on and make fun of Florida State, but I don't know. Maybe they all threw their computers into the Atlantic Ocean. Maybe it's going to wash up or something. Maybe up in the North Central Florida or something. But
yeah, not to pile on, but I did see where I saw some comments earlier today that maybe the government, maybe the governor of Florida should take on some of the Middle Tennessee staff because, they know how to deal with hurricanes. So, get out of Hurricane Ian pretty quickly, hire some folks from Middle Tennessee State.
Our thoughts and prayers to those of us, obviously, who are dealing with the storm down here in Florida. Our thoughts and prayers to the Miami Hurricane football team for getting snapped back into reality.
Tony, can you go into, obviously, Sam Hartman? He's got a lot of targets, and we saw that against Clemson right off the bat. I mean, throughout that whole game, like you said, he matched his school record there with the touchdown throws. Who are some names that FSU fans, and if you can give us the numbers too, because a lot of them are still going to be in the stands on Saturday, who are some names that we should keep an eye out on that Sam likes to go to quite a bit? Because Florida State, throughout their practices this week, and then they did it again in LSU prep too, but the defensive backs have played really, really nice the last 2 days, and they've got a big game coming up. They've got to play like this in practices, or it's just going to be a long day against Wake because Sam Hartman is one of the best, if not the best, in the ACC, competing with Jordan Travis right now. Right, this is going to be a phenomenal game. If you like scoring, this is it. And two quarterbacks that are playing exceptional football right now in 2022. But who are some names to keep an eye out on the offensive side on Saturday inside Doak?
Yeah, I think one of the things that if you're watching Wake Forest for the first time, one of the things you want to look at is they don't have a receiver, a go-to guy that's going to get the majority of the receptions. They've got 3 of them in the wideout position. If you ask Dave Clawson, he's got 3 starting wideouts. Because they'll tell you can put him in a bag, throw around the bag, pick one out, and he's happy with whomever you picked out. So you're going to see a lot of Donovan Green, who missed all of last season when he blew out his knee in camp. It's funny talking to Donovan during camp. His upper body strength was always something that people just were startled at, and he would say his weak spot was his legs. Well, he had to rehab the knee. So now his legs are tremendously strong. And you wanted the number. So number 11, Donovan Green, is going to be someone you're going to want to look for. A.T. Perry, number 9, is the guy who gets the headlines, who, was on the Biletnikoff watch list. And he's a guy who's going to go downfield and, beat defensive backs, down the sidelines. Sorry if you hear the cat screaming. But
Logan's cat comes on the show all the time.
I saw that earlier.
Yeah, she'll be back here soon.
Yeah, apparently,
the show here.
Apparently Gus doesn't think he's getting enough TV time, but he'll deal with it. But there's a guy that has really, I hate to say he's the breakout guy because he had a really good camp. He had a really good spring. He's been good. He's just elevated his game as number 80, Jamal Banks. He had a huge game against Clemson. He was really Hartman's main target against Clemson. So those are the 3 guys, on the wideout. They use slot receivers. They use Keyshawn Williams and Taylor Moore on in the slot. They're both really good. Sorry, you wanted the numbers. Number 2 for Moore and number 13 for Williams. So and they're very, very good slot receivers. That'll go over the middle. And then you got Blake Whiteheart, the tight end. So he's got a lot of options. They don't throw to the running backs very much. These guys are guys who are going to carry the ball. The offense just doesn't really, you're not going to see a lot of throws in the flat to a running back. You're not going to see running backs running a short wheel route, things like that. It's not part of the offense. There's a little bit of a misnomer with Wake's offense because they oftentimes run this thing called the slow mesh. And if you've never seen it before, it looks weird because it looks like a slow developing play where no one knows what they're doing. It's intentional. What it does is it moves everything up to the line of scrimmage. Even though Hartman's taking the snap and the shotgun, the running backs next to him and behind him, everybody is up at the line of scrimmage. It forces the linebackers to commit either to protecting the pass and taking on the tight end or a receiver, or you've got the running back, open up the middle of, whichever. So it forces some action from the linebackers, and then they react to the linebackers. There's a little bit of a misnomer that is Wake Forest's offense. I will tell you reality, they use it about 25, maybe 30% of the time, and the rest of it is pretty much a straight-up RPO type of offense.
Tony, for the most part, the first 30 seasons that Florida State was in the ACC, Florida State dominated this series. I mean, there was a 3-game stretch from 06, 07, and 08 where Wake Forest won. Wake Forest has gotten a couple wins ever since then, but we all saw what happened last year. We saw Wake Forest just absolutely dominate Florida State. I think it's safe to say this is a different Florida State team that Wake Forest will see come Saturday night. What is Wake Forest's mindset about Florida State? What is Wake Forest thinking? Comparing, you're seeing a Florida State team that essentially quit last season when the two teams played in Winston-Salem to a Florida State team that's coming into this game as nearly a touchdown favorite.
Yeah, I'll tell you, Dave Clawson is really impressed with the job Mike Norvell has done. He said so yesterday. He said Norvell has probably done the best job of any coach in the country of taking the guys that he inherited, whether guys who were already on the roster, guys who were already committed in the recruiting class, who were already coming in, and blending them with filling the needs via the transfer portal, filling in those gaps. And he said Norvell's done a better job than anyone else in the country at doing that and knowing where his needs were and being able to fill those gaps. So Clawson is really impressed. Obviously the 4-0 start opens a lot of eyes. I know there were a lot of people who thought maybe they shouldn't have beaten Louisville, but you know what? I saw the game and I see you're one of them. And I get that, but you know what? The good teams pull out games that perhaps they wouldn't have pulled out in the past. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's a game where Florida State 2 years ago or last year probably wouldn't have won the game. You're a better team because you got challenged, you got pushed to the wall, and you still won the game. Clawson also was very complimentary of Jordan Travis, and obviously anybody who watches as much college football as we do, you're going to be complimentary of Jordan Travis. You guys completing 66% of his passes right now, is in total control of the offense. And Clawson talked about how physically gifted Travis is, that he's really ramped up his game. He's ramped up his ability to run Norvell's offense without really any mistakes, any mental errors that looks like he doesn't understand where he is or what he's doing. Every quarterback makes mistakes, but it's clear that Travis is comfortable in the offense, comfortable in what he's doing, feels at ease running the offense, and it's made a huge difference. And Clawson talked about that yesterday.
Clawson also opened his mouth and talked about a certain thing that I feel will bring up, that must be brought up, because obviously, the state of Florida is going through a lot of stuff right now with Hurricane Ian. Sure. And Clawson made comments where he had said, and I'm paraphrasing because I'm not looking at it right now, that I hope the ACC will make the right decision. And if the ACC doesn't make the right decision, then we will. To a lot of people, that gave the impression that if the ACC was not to move the game, which it would involve a lot of schedule moving, because Florida State and Wake Forest do not share a common bye.
Correct.
Week the rest of the season, and so it would have had to move. It would have had to happen a lot earlier in the week. There was a thought that when Florida and UCF moved their games to Sunday, maybe Florida State and Wake Forest would get moved to Sunday as well. But the weather forecast looks like 30% chance of rain in Tallahassee, but it looks like it's going to be clear skies. There's obviously questions about fans like me from South Florida heading up to Tallahassee. I'm going to make the drive up. A lot of other people will.
Sure.
So I guess my question to you is this. Do you believe, as somebody who covers Wake Forest, that Dave Clawson would legitimately forfeit this game if he did not think it was safe, I guess?
I think probably not, but I don't want to say certainly not. Look, and I saw, social media went crazy last night. I was live tweeting from his press conference. I'm sitting there. When you watch the press conference, you can see him looking one way or the other, and he's looking over here in this direction. That was me, asking these questions, and because the issue was whose control is this, and it's in the hands of the ACC and Florida State. There was a notion of, I guess, and I guess let's just take it down item by item real quick if we can. Moving it to Sunday was never going to be a good option for Wake Forest because they got to play Army next week. It's already hellacious having to prepare for Army, a game which mystifies me why they keep it on the schedule, especially in the middle of the season. Goodness gracious, get rid of that game in the future. But doing it on a shortened week, if you move this Florida State game to Sunday, creates an even bigger problem. I think in terms of the moving the game, what was being looked at, and this is my own speculation, this is not coming from Clawson, but my own talking to other people, is on Monday when the storm was still gathering and was still an unknown as to its outcome of where it was going to take land, was move the game somewhere else. Put it in Birmingham, put it in somewhere in Alabama that was going to be dry, put it in, Louisiana, wherever, go to Tulane, whatever the case may be, right? And that was what was meant by moving it. Now, what Clawson took a lot of heat for yesterday was he said, if the ACC doesn't make the right decision, we will. Context and content is important because what was said next was, we need to look at everything, not just, we don't want to play this game. It's, if we go down there, what is the status of the city? In other words, is there flooding in the city? Is our hotel going to have electricity, or there going to be power outages? Is the place where we are going to be able to fully function to feed our team and our staff? And the hotel will have electricity. Are we pulling first responders from somewhere else where they should be if they're needed elsewhere in the city because, maybe the city gets hit with wind or power outages, and we're pulling them for the game because you've got to have, 50, 60 cops at the game, medics, first responders. It was that he was talking about. And that if he doesn't feel that the team can get down there safe and stay down there safely, then Wake Forest needs to have a conversation with itself and discuss its options. It was never, if they don't cancel, then we will. I think that kind of got blown up. Part of what does, again, looking in context, is Florida State, at least to some degree, was worried enough that they canceled classes on Thursday and Friday and canceled the homecoming, celebration. But within an hour or two after issuing that statement, they then said, we're playing the game at 3:30. Right. So there was a little bit of okay, which is it? I think at this point, and look, obviously the most important thing is the thoughts and prayers to everybody who lives in the state of Florida who's being impacted by that. I've got friends there. Just before we went on air, I was checking in with a couple of our writers who live in South Florida and one who lives in Tampa, and they just lost power. And, so those kinds of things matter much more than the football game. And I think Clawson was looking at it as there's a bigger picture than just, can we play the football game? Or, it's, what's the picture in terms of the status of the city? Is there going to be electricity? Is there going to be things that we can do to take care of our team? And I think it went crazy last night.
No. And I agree with you to a certain extent, Tony, is, on Sunday and Monday, this storm looked like it was going to hit the Big Bend region closer to Tallahassee at 2:00 in the morning Friday, which if that happens, the game gets either moved, canceled, there were possibilities of Wake Forest moving their game with Boston College, which is scheduled on October 22nd, up to this week. This game would have been moved to that October 22nd weekend.
Right.
That would have been great for Florida State, but there were options that could have been in play. No one saw this storm literally saying, you know what, Fort Myers and Charlotte County look good. Let me turn right here and just head up the central part of the state of Florida. I think what Clawson is getting the heat for was the comment, and I agree with you, context does matter on this one, is saying if the ACC doesn't make the decision, we will. Because I feel like he's trying to put that pressure on the ACC to say, oh, well, we should cancel this game. Or if neither team's in the ACC championship game, they can play it on December 3rd at 12 o'clock in Tallahassee. I just it comes across that way. But I do agree with you, and I think there will be first responders sent from the Panhandle, from cities like Pensacola, from Tallahassee, from Panama City, who will be sent to the central part of the state, the southwest part of the state. That's just what we do in the state.
Right.
But I think you look at it, and I think Tallahassee is going to be just fine weather-wise. But I feel like if Clawson had just been a little clearer with that, he wouldn't be taking nearly as much heat.
I agree. I think what happens is maybe it's clarity, maybe it isn't. It's that 5-second, 10-second pause after saying that before going on to the rest of that comment that makes it, easy fodder for social media people to just hear that part of it and not necessarily hear the rest. Because, look, I mean, in our reporting today, when we were doing a preview of the game that we published this afternoon, we had gotten some information from Leon County Emergency Services that got sent to us overnight when I sent in a request last night for some updates as to, their status. And basically they were like, look, we understand it's going to hit far south of us and make land. We may not even get very much rain. We are worried about the high winds. We are worried about what that does to the electricity. We're preparing as if we are in an emergency status, just so we're prepared. And we checked back about an hour before we published, and just to see if there had been any change. And everything was, we are still going off what we sent out, earlier this morning. So I don't think that's being alarmist whatsoever. I think it's showing that Leon County says, look, we're prepared. We know what we could be getting. We're not going to get the drenching that other parts of the state are getting. We could be getting stuff from the outer bands and the high winds. We're prepared for that. And we'll deal accordingly as things change. I think, look, you guys are more experienced at this than I am. I came from California. I got earthquake and fire experience. Okay. You guys have hurricane experience. As the storm changes, as you pointed out, it changed dramatically from what it was Monday to what it is as we air this right now. So I think, you look back and it was 24 hours ago, a little bit, probably 28 hours ago that Clawson made those comments. And the storm was in a different path then than it went overnight when it, took a hard turn, east and so on. So it's like I said, I tend to cut him a little bit of slack, not because I'm covering him. I don't, Mark knows, I don't cut slack to coaches I cover, not ever. Chip Kelly was probably more than happy to see me leave town. Probably would have helped me pack if I had asked him. But I think if you look at the big picture, it wasn't we want to cancel. It's we just want to make sure big picture is not just about can we go play a football game. It's are we safe down there? Are we pulling resources from something else? Are we going to wind up in a hotel that then loses power for 24 hours? That kind of stuff. So I think it was really that in the broader scheme.
Yeah, I don't think too much of it. I think we got a football game to be played on Saturday. That's all that matters. I think it was just early talk, and with forecasts, things can turn quick. And Dave's just getting ready for a game and making sure his players are safe. So that's all I think about it. But right now, it's game on no matter what. Florida State and Wake Forest are going to go at it 3:30 primetime afternoon. 2 ACCs going at it. So that's all I got for it.
You make a good point. Just real quick, is that Clawson said, "Look, let's understand. We're preparing our team to play."
Oh yeah.
And he also got trashed for making a comparison to the COVID years. And again, people didn't really understand what he was saying. and maybe he didn't say it well enough, but it was during 2020, we went every week not knowing if we were going to play or not. So you had to prepare as though you were going to play, because the minute you take 20 minutes off and think, well, we're probably not going to play anyway, you're unprepared and you're going to get beat. That was his analogy. But I saw a lot of social media people, trying to compare COVID to the hurricane. No, it's not it at all. What he was talking about was the preparation mindset, that you got to go in and spend every waking moment you've got preparing, because the minute you take some of that time off because you're watching the Weather Channel, you're going to wind up getting beat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One question real quick.
Sure.
On y'all's side and Wake Forest side, what is the biggest threat to Wake Forest going into this game, do you think, on FSU side? What do you think from what you've seen from FSU where you're like, this is a matchup I'm keeping a close eye on, or maybe FSU has an edge here that Wake Forest is going to have to play better on?
I think it's the defensive line for Wake Forest being able to finish or not finish in the Florida State backfield. They got a lot of pressure last week on DJ Uiagalelei, and look, DJ lost 30 pounds in the offseason, and theoretically he's a little bit more fleet of foot, although if you look at the guy, his calves are still as big as tree trunks. He's just physically that big. Hey, 30 pounds lighter, you'd think it'd be easier to bring down. But what you saw was guys getting their hands on him in the backfield and him still escaping to keep plays alive. Wake has got Rondell Bothroyd, who is turning out to be just an outstanding defensive lineman. Guys like Deion Bergen and Kobe Turner being able to get in the backfield but actually finish the play. And I think Travis Jordan presents a problem for Wake Forest because he is athletic enough and he is elusive enough that if you don't get him down, you've got to try and get him down on that first contact. You watch his game film and he doesn't go down on first contact. He doesn't go down just because you're grabbing at his jersey. If the Wake Forest defensive line can't get the penetration and finish plays in the backfield, it's potentially a long day for them.
Tony, we're going to finish up strong here real quick.
Yeah.
Give us your prediction. Go.
His prediction.
On the spot.
All right.
Remember what show you're on. That's all I'm saying.
Remember the show. All right. Look, I think there's going to be a lot of points put up. I think I'm looking at about a 38-34 Florida State win.
I was just kidding. You can pick Wake if you want to. I was really.
I think Wake is going to have a hard time with all the distractions of the week. You can say that they weren't distractions, but they were coming back from last week. And I will tell you that this is a must win for Wake. You can't lose divisional games back-to-back weeks like this. You can't. And so it's a must-win game. I think it stays close the entire way. I think one of the determining factors will be Wake cannot have the slow start in the first quarter that they've had for the past couple of weeks. You can't. Florida State will will put up big numbers early, and you're playing the catch up the rest of the game. So, I think Wake Forest. Let me say this. I think Wake Forest can beat Florida State. I think physically they can match up with Florida State. I think at the skill positions they can match up with Florida State. But my gut, since you put me on the spot right now, says 38-34 Florida State.
You still got Wake covering. Logan, what you got?
I'm in that range too, but just 1 point closer. I think it's going to be closer just by one, but I got 34-31. Florida State, just the advantage here, and it usually goes by this. If it's just 3-point win is home advantage. I think that's just the biggest thing for FSU going into this game right now. And the weather looks to be fine. I think the wind talk needs to go ahead and squash that. It's 10 to 15 miles per hour. That's not going to take away from Sam Hartman, Dave Clawson wanting to go for the dagger a couple times, go for the throat. You don't have to worry about the wind. Florida State's defensive backs have to play good in this game. They're still going to throw it no matter, no matter, I don't think the win's going to be a factor. So looking at it right now, and Sam Hartman is a lethal threat there at quarterback. One thing that I'm worried about, you're still going to rely on Derek McLendon and Pat Payton here. Losing Jared Verse, I think we're going to find out Florida State's going to hurt in this one on that. So, but I still have Florida State winning. I just think being at home is going to help quite a bit.
Mark talked about this before about how important of a game this is for Florida State. This is the 3-game stretch of Florida State. You start off 4-0. Florida State has to win one of these next 3 games, Wake Forest, NC State, or Clemson, to be at a point where you're 5-2 going into the bye week, got a bad Georgia Tech team coming out, and you could possibly be bowl eligible before the month of November starts. That would be huge for this Florida State team. I think, Tony, love you as a guest. You've been phenomenal the times you've been on here, but I think Wake is the easiest of the 3 teams at this point right now. I think that's why it's so important Florida State plays Wake Forest now, coming off a loss when they're a little bit like the wounded bird, I guess you would say. I'm going to say Florida State 35, Wake Forest 31. And I'm only going to say that because that means Florida State doesn't attempt any field goals, because I'm tired of watching Ryan Fitzgerald miss field goals. I'm sick and tired.
4 for 4 today with the wind gusts.
That's fine, but not watching them, but literally having my back turned to the TV and hearing, and a missed field goal for Florida State. I've had that enough in my life. I'm done with it. Ryan, stay on the sideline. Just attempt a couple extra points. You should be able to make those. That's all I'm saying. Although he did miss one last week. That's all I'm saying. Tired of it. I'm tired of it.
You guys are all in the same range here, like in the 30s, 3 to 4 point game across the board.
This is not like the Wake Forest teams that Florida State used to annihilate back in the day.
Right.
Wake Forest is a good
I know
team.
who they are.
Right. Wake Forest is a very good team. But that's why I think this is why Florida State. We want them right now. Logan, get your cat off the camera, please.
Tony's a fellow cat person too, so
yeah, Gus is over here screaming. You know, he wants his camera time, but I got to talk to his agent first.
Yeah, exactly. Got to get that money out of him.
Exactly.
Tony, another solid show with us, man. We appreciate you coming on with us every single
Always glad to do it, guys. You guys do great work, so I'm glad to do it.
Are you traveling down here, Tony, or staying up there?
My flight got canceled on Monday. And so, yeah, I mean, some of the airlines started to jump the gun. And so I thought about making the 7.5-hour drive down there, which not an issue. The issue was coming back, because coming back, it was inevitable to drive through storms in Georgia and South Carolina, getting their part of the storm. And that 7.5-hour drive turning into 12 to 13 to 14. And honestly, I mean, it's not that it's not worth it, because I wanted to see Doak Campbell's game. I wanted to go through all of that, right?
Yeah.
But you know, I record like you guys. I watch every game. I got 17 games, 18 games a week that get recorded on the DVR, so that I can do my votes for the Outland and the Nagurski and all of those that I do. I got a lot of work to do on Sunday. Spending 15 hours, you know, on the road to get back home probably wasn't the best use of my time. So we'll be covering it remotely. Wake Forest has been gracious enough to set up the post-game press conference via Zoom, because most of the Wake Forest media is not going down there for the game.
Gotcha.
Tony, man, we appreciate it. Thank you very much, man.
Glad to do it, guys. Be well and be
Thank
safe.
you, Tony.
Good to see you, Tony.
All right,
Thanks.
take care.
Tony.
Yeah, with Tony, I have run into somebody who watches more football than I do.
I didn't think that's possible.
That's wild.
Guys, stay tuned, viewers. Next week, I'm going to try to convince these guys to do it on Tuesday, do our show on Tuesday, because next Wednesday is Yom Kippur as the Day of Atonement. You guys don't want a grumpy Jason who hasn't eaten for 24 hours. So
I won't be there. Softball season, I will not be there. But
I might make fun of Miami even though it's their bye week. I still might.
And we're going to be able to tell the difference.
It'll be a little bit grumpier. A little bit.
All right. Logan, tee us up for everything you've got available here.
Hakeem Williams, 55 minutes, no game day YouTube. That's all I got to say. No Discord talk or anything. Hakeem Williams, this interview is going to be a fun one. Really want to pick his brain on a few things, because this is going to be your alpha of that 2023 class, in my opinion, for FSU. And there's a lot of things to talk about, including that hat throw. I got to know if that was some shade at Travis Hunter, as some Florida State fans know. Almost gave some guys some heart attacks, I feel like, but included Jason. Yeah,
This guy in the background with the camera going, what?
when that hat was thrown, yeah. But then whenever you saw P-Dub come out, that was like your savior. That was like God coming out there for you.
Pretty much.
But yeah, that's all it is. Hakeem Williams, and at 8:00 tonight we are going live with him. So that's all I've got.
Sweet. Love it. Florida State Live every Wednesday at 6 Eastern. Get on back here next Wednesday at 6, or if Jason gets his way, Tuesday at whenever Jason is going to do a solo show.
Either that or you let me eat a lot on Wednesday. One or the other is going to happen. So either watch us on Tuesday or watch me with my mouth full of food on Wednesday. Stay tuned.
Jason, you are welcome. You have ownership, management ownership of the channel. You've got permissions. You can jump on here anytime you want, and you can trash Miami. You can make your predictions. You can look at schedules for 2028. You can do whatever you love doing. And you can trash Chick-fil-A.
Oh, yeah. All right, then we're here. Done.
No, I don't know about that. It's a great place. Such a great place. I think they're off limits. Okay.
We'll discuss this. We will discuss this. Tune in at some point next week for FSU Live with Mark Rogers, the voice of college football.